Station 51, engine 27, engine 32, truck 105.
You're listening to The Fire Break with Steve Wolf. Welcome back to The Fire Break. I'm Steve Wolf. As you know, The Fire Break is sponsored by Team Wildfire. We're looking for innovative solutions to put out wildfires. Sounds reasonable, right? I've got
Good idea. Yeah.
I've got a really neat guest today with me today. I've got Mark Whaling, who spent 42 years serving the people of California as a firefighter when he was young, as a fire captain as he became middle-aged, and now that he's in the prime of life, having been a battalion commander as well, or battalion chief. He's running a company that provides some pretty cool technology for helping helicopters put out wildfires. Mark, welcome to the Fire Break. How are you today?
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Tell me about your company.
Whaling Fireline Equipment was a little shop thing I was doing out of my garage back in 1996. I had a little invention. It was a hose pack and valve, and the valve's kind of the big deal. It's a synthetic plastic sort of valve that passes a 1200 psi burst test, and we tie that in with a lightweight wildland hose and put it in a pack a certain way, and it's a very efficient, very quick way to get wildland hose around a fire. And that was the Whaling pack, and that was back in 96. And then I had some other ideas about a truck and then a Heli-Hydrant. And those ideas grew some legs here in the past decade. And now both those ideas have kind of taken off, and the Heli-Hydrant is really becoming a big deal.
So what is the Heli-Hydrant?
Well, what I did was, snorkeling helicopters or bucket dipping helicopters have used tanks brought in portable by fire for a long time. And I thought to myself, after a couple of fires where the fire had overrun our position, gone down and burned some homes, and that position we were on, the ridgetop, had a 1 million gallon drinking water tank, storage tanks. You see them on the hills in Southern California all the time. And I thought, why don't we have that pre-plumbed in? How do we do that? And so I started talking to pilots. I started talking to water districts and people in the waterworks industry. And I talked to the pilots and I talked to the waterworks industry, and I said, I need to connect you guys. What do you need? And because waterworks, they need very specific things. And what do you need? And that marriage is essentially the Heli-Hydrant. And what it allows is the helicopter pilot can come in, click his mic, send a signal, and then we have a tank that fills with water on its own, gravity fed, and then shuts off and is managed by a little float valve. And then that tank stays filled, and he keeps snorkeling water as long as he wants. When he's done, he can send a signal and it'll turn it off and drain it. And that was the simplicity of the idea. It grew from there. They wanted lights that were both helpful but not interfering with the night vision goggles. We wanted some other backups. We wanted to be able to have the tank do some things. We have to keep it dry for the sake of health. We don't need standing water sitting around. We had to keep it up to code because it has to have the same rating as the drinking water system you're connected to. So there was all kinds of different things that we had to do that normally firefighters wouldn't do in that situation. So we met the water department's needs. We met the pilot's needs. And Yorba Linda Water was the first agency to say, hey, we like the idea, install one. And so we did. And it was used on a fire that very same year and has been used several times since. We've installed 7 more, and we've got 10 more on the books in this next 2 months. So it's becoming quite a popular item.
That's great. And I guess you have to have the anti-backflow prevention and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff to keep
backflow. There's compatible metals. There's pipes types you put in different kinds of soil. Everybody has different. Each agency can have their own requirements.
Of course,
they've
they
all
do.
been slightly different, and we meet that need.
Okay, so you can't. So the concept replicates from place to place, but the technology may differ based on local codes, local soil conditions.
Yeah,
et
yes, it
cetera.
will. Yeah, we've used ductile iron, we've used PVC pipe, we've used different types of valves based on PSI. We've used solar powered systems. We've used systems that are strictly off street power. We've used battery backup. We've used systems that have wind socks that are lit at night, and we've had systems where they don't want any wind socks at all out there. So each agency, besides just getting the water to the helicopter, they often have little requirements they require, and we just meet those needs.
Really, really neat. So essentially, what you've built is a mega sized dog watering system, right? Where you got a big
That's
tank and it
yeah.
fills the little pool.
That is the probably the nicest way I've heard it described. Um, thank you, dog watering system. I like that. And
What do they call that? Like you get the 5 gallon
yeah,
thing and it's connected up to the little bowl and gravity feeds in as
yeah,
it's needed. Yeah,
simple.
perfect.
It's
Yeah,
it's simple. Why reinvent a good idea? And so, um, essentially, it's a hydrant for helicopters,
yeah, that's perfect.
and it's just a matter of we wouldn't think of putting a fire engine out on a fire, and and expecting him to protect a city and not have any fire hydrants. That wouldn't be a modern fire department. We have
Right.
fire hydrants every 300, 600 feet scattered throughout a city. And those hydrants are expensive. Those hydrants are robust. They're engineered a certain way. And they're specialized for just fire engines to hook up to. Yet we create these fantastic airborne platforms in these helicopters to go and essentially do somewhat of a similar job, that is, save structures from burning by putting out wildfires. And then we tell them, nah, you don't get anything special. You go find a golf course or a pond or a lake, or in this one flat spot we can park. We can take a fire engine off the fire. Never assign them to the fire. Assign them to you. Those guys will be parked in this flat spot, and we'll pump water to you. And these are all solutions, and these are all that firefighters can do. Give us a problem, we'll find a solution. We'll make it work. And those things do work. But what we found was, and I saw over and over again with wildland fires, is that sometimes seconds count a lot. And so for a multi-million-dollar helicopter to be flying over $1 billion water district that's protecting $1 trillion city, to get there and to not be able to use that resource to do his job and have to wait or have to fly farther away just to get $7.50 worth of water and drop it on a fire. It became a mathematical, illogical thing. And it was like, we didn't think this all the way through. We thought the helicopter all the way through, and by gosh, those things are spectacular. The water districts thought their job all the way through, and they were doing it, thinking that the end game for them was a street fire hydrant. And, firefighters were towing tanks around and putting them in various places when needed, and they thought they were doing their job. And I said, wait, we could take it a step up. Let's make a heli-hydrant. Let's make it permanent. Let's make it part of the water district, not a firefighting device for firefighters, but a integral part of a regular water district. And lo and behold, they were with open arms. Once they understood what we needed, once the pilots explained to them what the difference it's going to make, they jumped all over it. And now, in some areas, we have heli-hydrants every mile or two scattered across the foothills, right on the edge of the wildland urban interface, and water is literally seconds away.
So what does that feel like to be the 1 in 10 million members of the fire service that embraces innovation?
Oh, lonely most of the time. You hear a lot of, that's not how we do things. You hear a lot of, because inventing is essentially failing fast. And that's a phrase I use when I talk to people, is that when you invent things, you're merely just failing fast. You're trying something out, it fails. Try something else out, fails. Eventually something works. And then everybody goes, oh, an invention, that's great. Oh, I couldn't have thought of that.
Right.
And that's fine. Everybody, I hear that a lot too. And then, but the fire service and large, semi-military organizations aren't into sitting around watching you fail. So innovation is a challenge. innovation is not always the leading edge. And with tight budgets, leaned out crews and, everybody trying to make do, they don't have a lot of spare time and or money to let anybody within their organization, fail fast or slow. So creating new things is sometimes challenging.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yes,
we face the same challenges over here, but the way I think about it, when resources are scarce, that's the time you should be innovating, because you could end up with something that leverages your resources far more effectively than what you're doing now. In fact, if you had better technology, you might not be so short for resources.
Yes, and that was one of the reasons that we wanted to make these things installed and permanent, and then we wanted the pilot, because he's the only necessary person in this entire equation that has to be in part of this loop that we've created. He's the only human that has to be there. So we made it so that the pilot can turn on the device using the same technology they already have in the helicopter. There's nothing added to the helicopter. They simply use exactly what they use to turn on heliport lights or airport lights. They use that. It's integrated into the heli-hydrant. It opens the valves, it shuts the drains, it activates the lights, it signals the pilot, lets him know that he's hit the right heli-hydrant, and then it starts filling instantly.
Amazing. Wow. How fast does it take to fill it?
Each one's different, because what we do is, water tank is up here, heli-hydrant is here, wherever we put it.
Yeah.
And that head pressure is the deciding factor on that. So it can fill within 2 minutes, 3 minutes, or it can fill within 10 minutes, 15 minutes. It depends. And then we engineer the size of the pipe, the float valve, and everything else so that, once we got a decent amount of water in there, it can refill fast so that the helicopter's turnaround times, he comes back and there's a full tank waiting for him.
Wow, that's great. So does it refill once he leaves with the presumption that he's coming back?
It starts refilling the minute he starts drawing water up the snorkel.
Oh, okay, because the float valve.
As soon as that water starts going down, that float valve is activated, and that valve is opening up slowly, because we're dealing with such large volumes of water, we can't open or close slowly. So we've got a crew that's really trained how to set this up so that this valve will open up slowly until it's fully open and flood until it then it'll slowly close again, and then wait for the helicopter. So as soon as he starts drawing it down, it starts filling. And in the smaller helicopters, when they come in and fill, we've had chiefs and people watching these demonstrations. They'll, literally, as soon as the copter clears, they'll run up and look, and the tank will just about look like it wasn't even touched. It'll still be topped off. So on the larger helicopters, such as the Chinooks and stuff, especially the Billings, they've got that large snorkel that can take up 2,500 gallons in 56 seconds, is what they tell me.
Wow.
And it's basically true. It'll take that much water up. Now, they'll draw it down pretty quick, but it's filling up right behind them. And we supply the heli-hydrants with a 6 or an 8-inch pipe, not fire hose size. We're way above that.
And tell me about once that water is sitting there, let's say they put out the fire's moved on to another area. How does the system know when to drain so you don't have standing water?
A couple of different solutions. The pilots themselves, if they are so inclined, they can send in another appropriate signal and the system will drain. When the heli-hydrants are activated, the water districts are obviously alerted to the fact that their systems are in use. And so they'll send people up to the site, make sure everything's going smoothly in a timely fashion as needed. Nothing to do with firefighting speed, but water speed. And so everything that the pilot can do, you can do manually on the ground. Okay. You can activate the system, you can deactivate the system, and if the electronics is completely wiped out, the valves are all manual. You can turn a valve here, turn a valve here, and the same thing, it'll all work. So we built in some redundancy, because part of the reason for the heli-hydrants is the large natural disaster which we kind of experienced in Northridge, and we will experience again. And when it comes again, we're going to have the helicopter resources, and we're going to only have so many fire engines available, and they're going to be busy everywhere. We wanted to make the heli-hydrants so that they could activate them on their own. And that's why we build in as close to water tanks as possible so that the least amount of damage would impact them. And remotely, so the pilots don't have to land, don't have to do anything. They can do it in the hover and signal it. And multiple systems can be engaged at any time.
So with all those manual bypasses, you eliminate the concept of we can't give you water, the internet's down.
Correct. Yeah. I say stay old fashioned in many things. I will
keep it
never
simple.
forget when we have a computer system that was working great. Come up with a call, little map, give you directions, and off you go. And cell phone towers were down one day, and the computer was out of service. I turned to the fireman. I go, look it up in the Thomas Guide. He goes, what's a Thomas Guide? And I'm like, oh, well, pull out the map book. What map book? So it's always good. Technology is great. I love it. I use all kinds of technology, but the old-fashioned ways of knowing why that technology is what it is important. And so we built that into the heli-hydrant. It's old-school water works. The valves that we use are all valves they use in their industry today. There's nothing unique about them. They're not firefighting valves. Firefighters wouldn't recognize these valves typically.
And can a fire truck access the water the same way so that
since it's right near a municipal water system, there would be hydrants nearby anyway.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is just specialized.
There's not any reason. And sometimes where we put the heli-hydrant is out in a place where you really can't get vehicles to anyway.
Right, mountaintops and whatnot.
Yeah.
And mountaintops would make the most sense because then you get the most head pressure when you're serving the city below it.
Yeah. So usually we find the major reservoirs.
Okay.
And then we come down a little bit and find a little spur ridge, and there's usually a spot for a heli-hydrant. I've literally mapped out well over 500 in Southern California. And it's just a matter of those water districts contacting us and getting on board and finding out, where's the best spot for them. And then I coordinate with their water people, and there's lots of spots.
So you have to wait. Are you waiting? Is it a business model? Are you waiting on water districts to contact you, or are you reaching out to them?
They're reaching out to us pretty rapidly, and we are responding to them. And I think we have a ribbon cutting ceremony in 5 days. 6 days. We have 2 more heli-hydrants that are starting within about 20 miles of here. And on the books scheduled for right after that, there's about 10 more. So
great.
We're moving fast. We also have our crews training so that they can start splitting up. And instead of doing 1 at a time or 2 at a time, we can get 4 separate crews out there installing as fast as we can.
And there's no limit to scaling that. You could have as many crews working as you have calls for product.
Yes, yeah,
Right.
and it's waterworks stuff, and so there's a whole licensed group of people that are in that world that, on a day-to-day basis, most of us don't know anything about. But municipal water is an entity unto themselves, and
Boy, are they ever.
the municipal water services, they're all very competitive with each other. So I've been to their various events they have and their groups, and they're all trying to one-up each other on the awards they get, various things, and they're just as competitive and proud of what they do as any other agency I've been around.
I see. So you're providing really a service to the fire service, but your clients are actually the water districts. Is that right?
It's a hydrant, and as most people. Most people.
Fire departments don't run the hydrants. The water department does, right?
Yeah, the firefighters don't buy hydrants. We don't install them.
Right.
We'll check them once a year or whatever, but we don't. That's a whole nother world, and that is best run, installed, financed, everything through the water department and the fire service. Other than providing their helicopters and such like that, should just help us locate the locations and guide, provide any kind of knowledge they might have about the area, and just like we would install a regular hydrant.
Interesting. Yeah, and the whole concept of the word fire truck is a misnomer. I mean, it's a water truck.
Yes, yes.
Right? It's a big water tank with pumps on it.
Yep.
It just happens to be a beautiful shade of red.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So do you feel like the sales process is easier because you're selling to water districts rather than to fire departments and fire agencies?
Not necessarily. The bureaucracies are similar. I mean,
They are. There's no way around it, huh?
Yeah, I mean, you're essentially getting taxpayers' dollars, and you're purchasing something, and it is, it's got to be approved by various people. It's got to be looked at by various engineers. The thing you'll find is that there's all these guidelines for how things should be, and then each entity has a little bit of different interpretation. And so we just go with the entity. What they want, fine, we'll use that. Oh, you want it this way? Fine, we'll use that. You want it painted white? Fine, we'll paint it white. You want it painted beige? Fine, we'll paint it beige.
Whatever you want, right?
Yeah, we'll put a
Bring a
collage
color
on
swatch
it.
book, right? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. What do you want? And
Yeah.
because there isn't really like a standard out there now, other than we're setting a standard for permanently installed hydrants for helicopters, and so I'm open to any education I can get. Anybody that can bring other ideas in, all for it. I mean, portable tanks are always going to be part of the fire service. They're a good tool. The more tools you can bring to an event, the more options you have. So we don't need to stop doing anything with that. But cities adding this, what I also explained to the city is this investment in this infrastructure, it doesn't respond to fires out of state or out of county or be gone for 14 days or anything like that. So a lot of times we need to buy another fire truck, and then 5 weeks later they find out it's up in Sonoma County fighting a fire. Needed, good idea. Firefighters
Right.
are up there getting experience plus helping to save lives and property up there. But it's like they bought it to improve their city. Well, these permanently installed heli-hydrants, once they're in, they're on the books. And they've got regular maintenance, rotation, and valve checking, and we come out and test them if the water department wants us to. And I was at a meeting just the other night, and they were talking about the heli-hydrant, and at the same time the meeting was going on, the helicopters were flying overhead and training on night vision and night ops with the heli-hydrants. So
Don't they have the fun job, huh?
they do. I mean, I've spent a lot of time in helicopters, riding into fires and doing various things, and the hats off to the pilots. And that's one of the things we did is we went to the pilots and I universally asked them, "What do you want? What size do you want?" And of course, each one had a little different answer because they fly different kinds of helicopters and they all have different skill levels, but they're all the top-notch pilots. And they universally said, we want it this amount of size. And then a couple of them said, well, we would really prefer something 15 feet in diameter. And I'm like, okay, how deep? We'd prefer if it was 8 feet. And what they're saying is, hey, we'll take whatever we get. But if you want to know what makes us, come in quick, leave quick, get water, give us a big target. I mean, they're busy dodging a lot of other problems up there without having to worry about, trying to put something in, a small opening. So They said 15 by 8, so we built it 15 by 8.
Yeah, you don't really care what they say, right? The only change that you have to make is with your pencil.
Yes.
Right, and then the contractor go build it the way you say.
Exactly. And they, and what do we remind the helicopter pilots know this, but people are like, well, how long does it take to fill? And I said, you got to remember that they can start filling their helicopter with the snorkels when the water's, 18, 24 inches deep.
Right.
So as soon as it starts, they can get in and start getting water out right away. So, there's just a lot of different aspects of it that just turned out really well.
Yeah. So it sounds like this heli-hydrant concept, it doesn't really need you at this point, right? It needs a sales team and an execution team to go do it. And this will free Mark up to go figure out what the next necessary piece of technology is.
Well, I'm pretty busy with the hose packs and valves. I ship those all over the United States. They turned out to be the fastest way to put hose around a land fire. And people always like, oh, that's big. But it's like, it's just math. It's not me.
Yeah.
It's just math. All I did was look at all the ideas that were out there and mathematically take the best, the cream of the crop. The other idea I came up with was the command access vehicle. We're building those in New York. Those are daily. I'm getting calls, people wanting that vehicle. And so I'm busy, but I do have some other ideas as soon as I do get some time. I am delegating the heli-hydrants to the guys with the licenses, the contractors, and they're taking it and running with it. And I pretty much do stuff like this.
So since your command vehicle is being made in New York, when it shows up, does it have attitude?
It does. It has an accent to it, too.
Hey, what are you talking about?
Yeah, it'll take you out. So you got to be nice to it.
You know Steve Conboy?
I don't know. I don't know.
It's Citra Tech. Oh, well, you got to get on the phone with him.
Okay.
The heaviest Brooklyn accent you ever heard.
Well, what's nice is I get to talk to fire chiefs from all over the United States.
Yeah.
And they all sound a little different, but they all have the same pride in their organization.
Yeah.
They all have their same, we're number one here in county of whatever. But they like the truck because like that truck was born from using what we currently had. We had Suburbans, we had pickup trucks with shells on them. Of course, we're firemen. We'll make it work. I remember when the fire chief drove around in a sedan and everything was in a trunk, and that was what he had. But out in the field, like that truck, in case you're curious about that truck, that was born from Farrier trucks, horseshoers.
Wow.
I was on a fire, and I had a set up behind a Suburban with a little pull-out tray and stuff, and I saw this farrier working on a horse, and he had the big doors up on the truck, and I said, "That's a great field office." And I got a hold of him, and I said, "Man, this truck? Where is it built?" And he told me it's built in New York by Stonewell Bodies, and I said, "Wow, and I go, how long have you had it?" And he told me the whole history that, this was the best kind of way to get in and out of ranches and to set up and to do your work. I said, "How much does it cost?" And he told me the cost. It was years ago. I go, "Oh, that's kind of expensive." And he looked at me and he goes, "Son, that horse right there is $1 million stud horse." And I kind of stepped back and said, "Okay, I'm out of my element. I don't actually know what you do." And I kind of said, "Oh, I'm sorry." He goes, "No, you didn't know." And then so he comes over, he goes, "Well, what are you using?" Because he was kind of done with what he was doing. I said, "Well, he came over to the back of the Suburban, and we had 5 people crowded around back there, and we're all in and out. Radios are blaring, and it's a real small working area. And it's the best we have. It's not bad. It's just, that's what we have." And right then, a Type 1 tanker goes flying overhead with its props. Just, I love that, the old bomber sound.
Yeah.
And he looks at me and he goes, "How much does one of those cost?" And I go, well, billions of dollars. And he looks at me and he goes, "Suit yourself," turns around, walks away. And it was at that moment I went, why aren't we upping our game? Why aren't we improving our field office? What's wrong with us making a change here and doing this? And so contacted that company, said, "This is what I want to do." The first one was built in 2018. And we've now built 41 of them, and we've got 10 more on the books this week, and about 150 for future budget years that are waiting to be, put through it's grown quite a bit. We're looking at expanding here in California with a large factory for fire trucks in general, but we'll have a whole couple of bays just dedicated to cabs and stuff. So things are growing there too. So we'll see if I can. What kind of retirement is this? What have I done?
Yeah, there's no retirement for you.
Oh, this is not a way to retire. I'm working harder now.
Yeah, no doubt. There's no PTO or anything like that.
Nothing.
Right?
No, it's crazy.
Yeah, it is. So you've kind of got a nice sweet spot there, right? Because you recognize that, from your own firsthand experience and from the teams you work with, that there's a lot of both need and room for innovation in the technology. Yes. And then you have the brain wiring to figure out okay, well, this is what this actually needs to be on the tech side. And then you have the street cred as a battalion chief to say, been there, done that. I understand this. We're not a company that's never done anything in the fire space coming in tell you that we have, the better mousetrap. Like you bring that cred with you from your experience. So I think if anybody is in a position to bring innovation to that fire service space, that's you.
Well, thank you. I get to be around some other innovators too in the fire service, and I look up to them, and we share ideas and such. And I'll remember back in 1982, I drove a patrol from Kern County down to the Forester and Fire Wardens Conference, and there was a old gentleman there who was on 80 years old, had been retired out of the fire service back in the 60s or whatever. And I was talking to him at lunch, and he goes, "We don't ever have to stop innovating. Everything you see here today can be improved on."
That's
and
right.
I was looking at this guy, and he was like from World War II time fighting fire, and I'm like, that's when he started, and he goes, yeah, he goes, "Don't stop." And I said, "I have this idea." He goes, "Go." And then he told me a story. He goes, "The Wright brothers?" I go, "Yeah, my heroes." He goes, no one told them to go out to the sand dunes and make this happen. They just decided to do it. No one funded what they were doing. They made their own money, and they spent about $1,000 to create the Wright Flyer. Hard to believe, but that's what they spent. He goes, "Mark, at the same time that they were doing that in Kitty Hawk, the federal government was sponsoring a program to fly off of a houseboat in the Potomac, and they spent $70,000 on it. It crashed. The pilot almost got killed. The vehicle wasn't even aerodynamic, and they wasted $70,000 on nothing." It doesn't take big money. It doesn't take a big organization. It just takes somebody who has a vision and a desire and the drive, and you just keep failing fast. And then when you're done failing, you succeed.
Yeah, right. You're not. I don't even think of it as failing. You're just eliminating options on the way to the right technology.
Yeah, I like when Elon Musk, when he saw his rockets blow up, he said, "Well, we learned something there."
Exactly.
I mean, that's kind of a extreme thing.
It's an expensive lesson, but it's not untrue.
But and that's just it. It's there's always ways to improve. We can so improve what we're doing right now, but there's the mechanical part of improving. That's one thing. There's the technology part of improving, and then there's the social cultural part of improving. Yeah, if you talk about doing things a different way in the fire service, you've got people that are entrenched in, this is the way I've always done it. This is the way I was trained. I got promoted because I learned how to do this so well. Don't waste my time or burden me with something new, because for whatever reason they don't want to take it on. Maybe they're at their limit of what they can do and know, or maybe they just don't want the burden of trying to take on something new. But so innovation not only has the challenge of innovating, of creating something, culturally finding organizations that will embrace it. And so, like, before I got to Yorba Linda and they welcomed us with open arms to do this, I spoke to many water districts who just about shut the door. I brought the idea up to my own department and was laughed out of the idea and told that's not how we do things. And, so it's not uncommon for that to happen to anybody who tries to innovate. So you just got to accept that. Don't take it personal. It's just the way it goes.
Yeah, right. Very, very, very interesting. So we talk about that as, we call it socializing the technology, right?
Yes.
Putting it out there, letting people see it, getting feedback on it.
You've got to do a lot of dog and pony shows.
Yeah.
You've got to show them. Before we built that first one in Yorba Linda, there was a battalion chief named Tim Adams with Anaheim Fire. And he grabbed a hold of the idea, and I said, "Hey, I want to test this technology." And he found a spot where we could put it was a very small tank, but we were just testing the technology. And so he said, we'll get permission to do it here. And how official that permission was granted, I don't know, but he helped it happen and got me the hose and got me, he wasn't even from a department I knew of. And then we had a friend in the air ops of the local, agency here. And he goes, yeah, I'll get you some helicopters. We'll test it out. And I said, do you need to run it by anybody? He goes, they're going to be out flying anyway. Don't worry about it. And so when you have guys that can innovate,
yeah,
you can jump through all the bureaucratic hoops. And, sometimes and most often you'll get stopped because a lot of people who promote discover they have the veto power. And so they're very good at stopping things. Helping things go forward is much harder for them. So you got to find ways around that. And I've run across people that were able to help things move forward.
Yeah, well, because you have a lot of vision and determination and focus on your idea, it will attract the people that you need to help you get through those hoops. That's been our experience so far. Like the allies come out of the woodwork.
I've explained it to a group of people and had them different ideas, and the Heli-Hydrant, and had them universally reject it. And then after the meeting, hey, Mark, you know what? I kind of thought it was a good idea, but everybody was, the lead here guy, the lead dude was kind of poo-pooing you. So I didn't want to, get on his bad side, but I think it's a great idea. And so you're on the right track. And it's real important to take your idea and put it in front of your peers.
Yes.
Let them laugh. Let them knock it over. Let them make fun of it. Let them break it. Let them come up with all the negatives they can possibly come up with. Because whether they realize it or not, they're helping you.
That's right.
They're helping you get to the end. They're showing you the weak points. I've had ideas, brought them up, and had people, tell me why that wasn't going to work. And I went, my God, he's right. He's absolutely right. I got to change directions. I can't go that way. I got to go this way. And I changed directions because of somebody who thought he was probably criticizing or belittling me or whatever, who knows. But they actually were right. And so I just smiled and said, thank you. Went the new direction.
Yeah, but I own the IP, right? So
I do own, the patents are fun to have. You get to meet my favorite people in the whole world, the lawyers.
Yeah, right.
They are just wonderful people. But I happen to have a really good patent lawyer, and he's a very nice guy, and he worked really hard to make the Heli-Hydrant. There's a patent on the Heli-Hydrant, not all the components, but some specific components. And it was that once again, very educational process. And so when you look at all the inventions, I am not an expert in any one part of them. There's plastic injection molding, there's electronics, there's avionics, there's industrial hydraulics, there's metallurgy, there's paint, there's epoxies you've got to know about. I don't.
You don't need to. I mean,
I
you
know
got people
enough.
who know that. Yeah.
I know enough to find the people that do know a lot about them. I
go.
bring them on and, pick their brain. They're happy to share. I bring them in as partners. I bring them in as, business partners and say, well, hey, you take this portion of it and run with it. Make the best tank you can. You take the best portion of this you can. Make the best electronic components you can. Hey, and so people do that, and then they make money. I'm happy because the idea is happening, and I think the best thing was the coal fire, just not too long ago, off the 91 freeway, where they engaged 2 heli-hydrants, had 17 sorties with the helicopters, stopped it, and that same fire without the heli-hydrants, would have definitely extended. Whether it would have made it to the homes or not, is, of course, no two fires are exactly alike. But the point is that that's just it. The best story I could hear is that there's no story that they put out the fire.
Right.
And we've had a couple of those. There's some fires that started in Chino Hills. This was 2 years ago. They used the heli-hydrant, they put out the fire, and never even got named. It never became a fire of any consequence whatsoever. So that's the goal, to never hear about them. Never hear about what they're doing.
Right.
And And then of course, the heli-hydrants are there when it's time for prescribed burns or control burns or something like that. The same tool is permanently set up to go 24/7, and away we go. And there's some neat innovation coming down the pike that I'm aware of that I can't speak to much of the details, but it's like I just love being part of it. And it's happening.
Exciting. Innovation is exciting.
It is.
And if it wasn't for, innovation and all the opposition to it, that Farrier truck that you turned into a command vehicle would still be serving as a Farrier truck, replacing the horseshoes on the horses that were bringing the pump to the fire.
Yes. Or I do a presentation where I show people an old main made out of a log, and it has holes in it and plugs that have been put back into it because that's how they used to get water from the water main. They'd dig down, find the main, drill a hole, and let the water fill up the hole they created, and then they'd put the hard suction in, and they'd suck the water out, and this muddy, dirty water, and that's how things were done.
Precursor to the hydrant. Huh?
Right. And it's like back in those days, if you'd have said, you could have been the guy who says, I'm going to improve this, and instead of making a hydrant, he makes a real fast backhoe that digs real fast and drills real fast. I mean, we could all be having units that do that.
Right.
Who knows what could have gone faster? But yeah, it's just amazing. I remember when I was showing a picture of a Farrier truck, and I went and I said, look, I got this idea for a battalion chief vehicle. Now, keep in mind, a Farrier truck is wider than the cab, so it's kind of bulky, and it's taller. So the truck is not attractive for, firefighting coolness. Right. And I knew that in order for it to work, it had to be the same width as the cab and the same height as the cab, and kind of smoothly integrated into it.
Yeah.
But I was showing these pictures of this Farrier truck to all these people and these chiefs, and I was a captain at the time. And I was saying, hey, I think this would make a great command vehicle, da-da-da-da-da. And of course, a Farrier truck has a big arm on the back that has an anvil.
Right.
Okay? So I'm showing this and I'm explaining the concepts and stuff. And this, I won't mention his name. He walks over and he goes, What are we going to use the anvil for? This is a stupid idea. And then he walks off.
It's for you to beat your head against when people are knocking your innovation.
And I looked at him, and I looked at a couple other people who were kind of like, oh, I don't think he got it.
Yeah, no.
And I just sat there and I thought, it's okay. He has other talents.
Right.
He's not, he can't think outside the box. People that don't think outside the box very well, I'm okay with. There's a reason that, we need lots of people inside the box who think well inside the box.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, and they don't need to be outside the box thinkers. We need people day to day, handling business day to day. And if you're going to be part of an organization, you need to be good inside the box too. So everything you do outside the box, that's on your own.
Work inside, right?
Yeah, very few. It's not like I get to be part of a big organization that has a whole wing of innovation. Like private industry, because they're eventually going to make money at it. Whereas in public service, we wait for well, now that I'm retired, now that I'm in private industry, I'm free to do whatever I could come up with. So I got a whole warehouse full of ideas that I'm tinkering with. So it's fun.
So with regard to the anvil example, I'd like to have your feedback on this, because we think that the sweet spot is about 90 to 95%. Show them what your vision is, right? You paint it out for them, make it really clear what this does, and then leave a little bit of it unfinished so that they can put their fingerprints on it. Because if they get to look at your design and say, oh, wow, and if you added this one more thing, then you're getting buy-in from these people who are going to be your customers, because people support what they create.
Exactly. Buy-in is far more important than a good idea. I would love to say that good ideas just sell themselves, but that isn't true.
No.
A good idea will die on the shelf if you haven't got buy-in from the right people. Keep in mind, if you don't get the right people, those same right people that can totally help you can totally hurt you, totally stop what you're trying to do. You're trying to produce red somethings. Suddenly they're promoting blue somethings, and you're going, whoa, wait a minute. But that's just like my idea, but you just made it a different color. And I don't know what you're talking about, and then off they go, and that's okay. That's business. It's cutthroat sometimes. But you're right, buy-in. So, and I did that a lot. I would take the idea, throw it out there, and just let everybody bat it around and, come up with what they thought was the best.
Yeah, it's Columbo as a salesperson.
Yeah, yes. Same. What do you think? You think that might be a good idea? Heli-Hydrant. Somebody had an idea once. He said, "Well, couldn't the helicopter pilot just use one of his legs to just bump a lever and turn it on that way?" And I'm like, "Okay, well, let's see what the pilots think of that idea." I didn't kill his idea.
Right. You didn't say, sure, once the FAA approves this new part and we redesign all the helicopters.
Right. It was a no-go.
Right.
But I didn't want to kill the person.
Yeah, right.
So I said, well, let's talk about, what, and the pilots explained why that's not safe and they're not going to do that. And there's 100 reasons why not to do that. But it wasn't from me. And I'm like, right. Oh, okay, thank you. And he was like, okay, thank you. Now I know. And he got it from somebody else, even though I could have told him that's not a good idea. But you don't kill people. In these kind of organizations, we kill people quickly. We overwork them, we demoralize them, and if they're trying to come up with something new, by God, they get slammed most of the time.
Well,
and we talk about it. It's not unique to the fire service. It's everywhere.
No, it's everywhere. Right.
Yeah.
Well, Mark, I can't tell you how much I appreciate the opportunity to have met you and learn a little bit from you and hear about the things you're working on and the path that you've taken from, one innovation to the next and the momentum that gives you going forward, which really empowers you to bring the next thing to market. So,
yes.
Thank you so much for that. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to learn more about you and what you're working on?
Whalingfire.com. That's my website. That's my last name and fire and .com. Mark Whaling is on Facebook. You can call me. All those places have my phone number. All
right. And I'll put a link next to this interview so that people can get right to you. And what a wonderful coincidence that you happened to find a company to work for that had the same name as you.
It is. It's amazing. The diagram you see of Whaling Fire, it's a little fireman. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
You'll see it when you go to the website and stuff. My son drew that when he was in junior high.
Oh, wow.
So
That's
it's
great.
been a family company, so to speak, for many, many years. And now he's a fireman, and
Really?
he's taking this over so that I can finally go on a cruise or something.
Oh, that's great. I hope he does that for you soon.
Me too. All right.
Mark, thanks so much for joining us. This is Mark Whaling from the Whaling Fire Line Equipment Company, maker of the Heli-Hydrant and the Whaling Pack, and a lot of other stuff you've probably seen out there. And if you haven't, we hope that you do soon. I'm Steve Wolf. You've been listening or watching The Fire Break. We're sponsored by Team Wildfire. Look forward to seeing you at the next one. Take care.
Thank you.